Welcome to the Stellar Vault. Say hi in the comments to awaken the archive. Then like, subscribe, and let the tale begin.
New Thessaly had always been a noisy world. Wind across the grain fields, the hum of haulers on the ridge roads, the chatter of markets spilling into narrow streets. This morning, the air felt wrong. Joran Mesk noticed it first while repairing a broken irrigation pump. The sound of his own breathing was too loud. Even the insects were gone. He straightened, wiping grease from his hands, and looked up. The sun was there, but its light was thin, as if filtered through deep water. Then the light began to fade, not in patches, but all at once. Shadows deepened. The sky went gray. Something was moving overhead, enormous, smooth, and silent. It slid across the heavens without thrusters, without contrails, without sound. It had no visible hull lines, just a perfect dark curve that devoured the horizon. His gut went tight. Down by the road, a delivery hauler slowed, its driver leaning out to stare at the thing blotting out the sun. Another man stepped from his porch, muttering something Joran couldn't hear. The air had become heavy, pressing against skin like the pressure before a storm. The ground vibrated, faintly at first, then harder, until Joran felt it in his teeth. The first light came from the west. A razor-thin wave of distortion swept toward them, bending the air in its path. Wheat bent flat in unison, each stalk pointing east, as if obeying a silent command. Then the noise followed. Not thunder. Not any engine Joran knew. It was lower. Deeper. The groan of something titanic breaking itself apart, drawn out until it scraped against bone. On the horizon, Kesarine, capital of New Thessaly, flashed once, a blinding blue-white, and vanished. Not crumbling, not burning, just erased. People began to shout. A woman grabbed her child and sprinted toward the nearest shelter entrance. The hauler reversed hard, tires screeching against the road. Joran's chest tightened. His legs wouldn't move. Every comm device in sight flickered to life. Screens turned black, showing only a single pale symbol Joran didn't recognize. 3 curved lines intersecting over a circle. Then a voice came, cold and clean, speaking perfect Terran. "One world falls today. How many more before you surrender?" The message ended. Above, the vast shape kept sliding east, swallowing towns, cities, whole landscapes beneath its dark curve. It was then Joran understood the silence wasn't the absence of sound. It was the sound of the entire planet holding its last breath. Relay Station Argus 7. The alarms came without sound. On the long-range subspace bands, New Thessaly's planetary emergency code appeared and vanished again in the space of a heartbeat, replaced by an alien compression signature that no one on low-orbit Relay Station Argus 7 recognized. "Sir, priority flash from New Thessaly," Ensign Rahl said, voice sharp. "Source ID matches planetary emergency, but the packet's carrying non-human compression markers." Commander Varric Rin pivoted from the viewport. "Run a trace. Status of the planet?" Rahl hesitated. "Sir, there's no status. Surface telemetry isn't—" Wait. The tactical display burst into static, then reformed into a single planetary feed. Varric froze. New Thessaly was gone. Where green continents and deep blue seas should have been, there was only gray. Not smoke, not ash, but something smooth, featureless, like the skin of a dead world. Cloud systems were gone. The oceans had vanished, replaced by flat, reflective plains that caught the light of the star and threw it back in blinding silence. Cities, mountains, forests, erased so completely that even the orbital nav beacons had nothing to lock onto. It looked less like a planet and more like a mirror. The voice arrived an instant later, cold and deliberate. "One world falls today. How many more before you surrender?" Varick's hands tightened on the railing. "Full descent arc. I want a visual sweep." The Argus 7 dropped into a lower orbit, the shattered moon of Thessaly rolling past in the background. As the station's forward cameras cut across the surface, Varick saw the truth. Cities were outlined in faint, perfect depressions where foundations had been. Roads stopped mid-line, ending in nothing. The crust itself had been sheared smooth for kilometers in every direction. Raal's voice was low. "Sir, we're picking up residual gravimetric flux. This wasn't bombardment. This was annihilation." Varick didn't respond, because at the far edge of the gray plain, something moved, a shadow that bent light as it slid across the horizon, disappearing into FTL. The entire crew stood silent, staring at a world that no longer existed in any way they understood. Varick forced himself to breathe. "Transmit to Terran High Command. Full priority. Tell them." He stopped, the words catching in his throat. "Tell them something have taken a world." The transmission from Relay Station Argus 7 hit Terran High Command like a knife through armor. The data packet was tagged "Full priority. Direct line to the Strategic Defense Corps on Earth." Encrypted, authenticated, and carrying Commander Varick Rin's signature. In the war room beneath Olympus Mons on Mars, the holo of New Thessaly hung in the air. Not the vibrant colony world it had been, but the gray, lifeless mirror Varick's cameras had captured. The image rotated slowly, reflecting light in sterile gleams, as though the planet itself had become metal. No one spoke for 27 seconds. When Admiral Kadrin finally did, his voice was gravel. "How long before they do it again?" Around the table, 10 other flag officers and ministers stared at the projection. Some leaned forward with their hands clenched. Others sat back, eyes fixed, as if looking away would break something inside them. Minister Harvek, head of the Colonial Administration Bureau, broke the silence next. "We had 28 million citizens on that world. Where's the debris field? The evac ships? Anything?" Kadrin's aide pulled up a gravimetric overlay from the packet. It showed nothing. No ships leaving orbit. No mass signatures moving away. Only a faint residual flux across the planet's surface. A signature that was already fading. Kadrin didn't look away from the image. This wasn't bombardment. It was extermination. Across the table, Fleet Marshal Roan tapped a sequence into his console. The holo split into 2 windows, one still showing the planet, the other displaying the alien voice Varick had recorded. The words repeated, "One world falls today. How many more before you surrender?" The sound engineers had already stripped the noise, flattened the spectrum, and rebuilt the voice print. "Signature match," one of the techs said. "They've used this packet architecture before. Council records flagged it last cycle. The result showed the culprit. Vare Ascendancy Rebel, an alien faction acting outside Galactic Council authority. Motivation: prove independence and technological superiority. Demonstrate willingness to annihilate worlds for political leverage." The war room's tension broke when Kadrin finally slammed a palm against the table. "I don't care if this was a test, a warning, or theater. Someone erased a Terran capital. We will respond." Minister Harvek hesitated. "With what? If they can strip a planet like that, what's our countermeasure?" Kadrin's gaze slid to Marshal Roan. "The prototypes. Are they ready?" Roan's expression was unreadable. They're ready enough. The room went quiet. Everyone knew what that meant. The Railgun project, officially Orbital Kinetic Cannon Platform Theta, wasn't supposed to see combat for another decade. It was massive, slow to aim, and its power draw could be seen from half a sector away. But if it hit, nothing in the known galaxy could stand in its path. Kadron's voice dropped, steel under the gravel. Then it's time the galaxy learned what ready enough means. Vare Ascendancy Flagship, Dominion of Wills. The chamber was dark except for the slow pulse of violet light running through the deck plates. High Executor Cern Talvek stood at the observation ring, watching the gas giant turn below. Its storm bands curled in graceful violence, but his attention was fixed on the tiny silvered sphere caught in the giant's light. New Thessaly, or what was left of it. It gleamed now, perfect and smooth, stripped of oceans and life, a flawless mirror to the Vare's power. Terran colony neutralized, surface restructuring at 99.4%, reported a voice behind him. Talvek didn't turn. His crown crests, 6 jointed spines that flexed when agitated, remained folded in perfect composure. "Your figures are imprecise, strategist," he replied. "The surface is at 100%. The variance exists only in your confidence." The strategist lowered his gaze, crest dimming. "Yes, Executor." Talvek finally faced him. "Do you know why this was necessary?" The younger Vare hesitated. "To force the Council to acknowledge our sovereignty, and to remind the human subspecies of their place." "Correct." Talvek paced slowly along the ring. His claws clicked softly against the alloy. "The humans are adaptable, yes, but they are reactive. They respond to wounds rather than anticipating them. Show them a wound of this magnitude, and they will recoil. They will bargain. And in that bargain, the Ascendancy will rise free of the Council's leash." He turned back to the mirror world, his voice almost soft. "Primitive minds cannot endure the annihilation of their kin without yielding. The humans will not war with us." Behind him, the strategist's crest flickered uneasily. "And if they do?" Talvek's answer was instant. "Then they will die as easily as New Thessaly." War Room, Olympus Mons. Defense Complex, Mars. The hollow of the Vare's transmission replayed again, the smooth, cold voice issuing its threat over the image of a dying world. Admiral Kadron watched it in silence, leaning on the table. "They're not hiding," he said finally. "They want us to know exactly who they are." Marshal Roan's eyes narrowed. "We still don't know how they did it. No known weapon matches this profile." "Which is why," Kadron said, "we'll use one they can't match." He shifted his gaze to Minister Harvek. "You've got the authority to move Theta to full activation." Harvek hesitated. "If Theta comes online, every neutral world will see it. The Council will brand us as aggressors before we even fire." "Good," Kadron growled. "Let them watch." Relay Station Argus 7. Commander Varric Rin's bridge was quiet except for the hum of the sweep drones feeding back telemetry. The anomaly on Thessaly's horizon had been traced, a gravitational ripple too controlled to be natural. Raals keyed his controls, and his station pinged again. "We've isolated the FTL wake. It's faint, but the gravimetric pattern matches a Vare Ascendancy warship. Jump occurred 16 minutes after their transmission." Varric leaned over the display. The wake wasn't just a departure trail. Its harmonic spikes were identical to the anomaly that had erased New Thessaly. Whatever destroyed the planet had been built into their jump technology. "Log every fluctuation," he said. "Earth's going to get the exact road they took out of here." The bridge stayed quiet, all eyes locked on the shifting gravimetric waveforms. No one mentioned the obvious, that every second they waited, the trail decayed. Varric opened a channel to Mars. High Command, this is Argus 7. I have their trail. Advise immediate tracking before residual flux decay. Cadron's reply came through, iron and low. Transmit. And Varric, keep your station armed. Vare flagship. Hours later. Talvek's private chamber was lined with bone-white data spines, each pulsing with a faint inner light. The air carried the dry, metallic tang of preserved trophies, fragments of cultures the Vare ascendancy had broken and absorbed. He stood before one spine, tracing his claws over the embedded runes. Stolen Terran code, taken more as a statement than a necessity. His aide entered quietly, keeping his head lowered. Executor, the human response window is closing. No fleet movement detected. Their warships remain in dock. Talvek's crest lifted in slow satisfaction. As expected, the Council has them tangled in procedures and votes. By the time they decide to act, our demonstration will be an established fact. The aide hesitated. And the Council itself? Talvek allowed himself a low, amused pulse through his crests. They will posture. They will protest. But in the end, they will accept. They cannot punish us without revealing how little control they have. Every outrage they voice will only make our independence stronger. He turned from the data spine, his silhouette framed by the cold light of the void. Let the humans nurse their grief. Let the Council choke on its own rules. The Ascendancy answers to no one. And today, the galaxy saw it. What Talvek didn't see, could not imagine, were the encrypted flashes burning through Terran space at that very moment. From Mars to Titan, from the fleet yards at Kepler 62 to the deep space relay stations, orders moved at light speed. Not orders for retreat. Orders for the largest orbital weapon Earth had ever built to wake. The afterimage of New Thessaly still burned in Commander Varric Rin's mind, not from a viewport, but from the final sensor sweeps before the Vare vanished into FTL. On Argus 7's bridge, the crew worked in near darkness, every console running on passive scan. No active pings, no chatter, only the patient listening of hunters tracing a fading trail through the void. Ensign Ral's voice broke the silence. Sir, Probe Cluster 4 reports. Gravimetric disturbances ahead. Pattern. Irregular. Varric stepped closer, eyes narrowing at the readout. Not the clean, slicing FTL wake they'd tracked from Thessaly. This was heavier, slower, like something too big for its own cloak, trying to move quietly. Adjust vector to intercept shadow side, Varric ordered. Minimal thrust. Keep us cold. The crew moved with quiet precision. Every second mattered. The trail was already decaying. Varric studied the fluctuations again, the deep pulses buried in the noise. It was almost like a heartbeat. He tapped the comm switch. High Command, this is Argus 7. We may have a location for where they went. Transmitting preliminary trace now. Mars, Strategic Defense Corps. Admiral Cadron stood in the smaller war room with Marshal Roan, Minister Harvek, and Lieutenant Aaron. The main council chamber above was still drowning in political arguments about jurisdiction and council protocols. Cadron ignored them. The holomap above the table rotated, showing a dim cluster of heat signatures at the edge of mapped space. Sparse stars. No known traffic lanes. The energy profile was too regular to be natural. Aaron's voice was calm, but certain. Cross-referencing with the Thessaly packet. This matches the compression marker origin point. I'd bet my commission the Vare are there. Roan studied the map. Big enough to stage a fleet? Or something bigger, Aaron replied. Kadrin didn't hesitate. Send the coordinates to Rin, quietly. Argus 7. The tight beam burst arrived seconds after Varric's own message left the queue. It was encrypted to his personal key, Kadrin's seal stamped in the header. Raal glanced at him. Same coordinates we were about to send, sir. Varric read the packet, jaw tightening. That confirms it. Set course. Shadow approach. No noise, no mistakes. The Argus 7's drives whispered to life, carrying the station deeper into the fractured remains of an ancient moon. Broken rock drifted in lazy arcs, the perfect place to hide something vast. And then they saw it. Metal. Towers. Docking rings. A hollow core drawing in debris like a predator's mouth. It wasn't just a ship, it was a nest. And at its heart, something so massive it seemed to bend the shadows around it. Varric didn't need a name to know who it belonged to. The Ver ascendancy had left its mark on New Thessaly. Now, they were about to learn someone was hunting them back. The shape between the asteroids was not a ship, it was a nest. Argus 7 drifted in the deep thermal shadow of a spinning, city-sized asteroid. Every non-essential system was powered down. Drives sat on cold standby. The station's hull was coated in an ablative chameleon layer, matching the jagged rock around them. In the dense metallic belt, thick with EM noise and thermal echoes, the nest's sensors would have to be perfect to find them. And Varric Rin knew they weren't perfect. Not anymore. The same gravimetric weapon that had erased New Thessaly had burned through part of the Ver's own perimeter grid, leaving their long-range coverage patchy. He had chosen this moment for a reason. Through the drone feeds, the Ver structure loomed, a hollow spindle turning slowly, ringed with hundreds of docked vessels. Its capture web drew in debris from the field, stripping rock for ore and sorting metal for its forges. Shards of Terran alloys, scavenged from New Thessaly, glittered in the web like the teeth of a predator. Varric's jaw flexed. "Mark every docked ship! I want firing solutions ready!" Raal hesitated. "Sir, we're one station against—" "Not firing," Varric said. "Not yet." Inside the Ver nest, High Executor Surin Talvek stood at the edge of his command balcony, gazing down at the core forges. The stolen Terran alloys were already being melted, folded into the hull plates of Ver raiders. The hum of machinery was almost pleasant. "Their metallurgy is crude," his chief artificer rasped, "but it has density. Flexible under strain." Talvek allowed himself a thin smile. "Primitive minds often stumble on useful accidents. We will improve it." He didn't even glance at the latest surveillance packets from their outer sentries. Humans were slow, predictable, bound by rules and councils. They would protest, posture, and then fall silent. New Thessaly had been proof enough of that. Argus 7, Observation Bay. Varric watched through the drones as a new docked vessel lit its drives. Not one of the Ver zone, but a captured Terran patrol craft, its markings stripped. "They're learning our control systems," Raal said quietly. Varric keyed the tactical net. "Ops, bring Hunter Knots online. Set them to cold launch from the forward spine." "Sir, we can't take that nest head on." "We're not," Varric said. "We're cutting their eyes out." The order went out. 6 black, needle-like drones slipped from Argus 7's hull, invisible against the rock. They threaded the asteroid belt in silence, each carrying a shaped charge, tuned for electromagnetic disruption. One by one, they latched onto the Ver's outer sensor pylons. A flicker, a pulse, and half the nest's long-range vision went blind. Inside the nest, alarms rippled across Talvek's command tier. He snapped his gaze to the display as sectors of the perimeter grid winked out. Interference? No, Executor. Localized strikes. Precision. Talvek's smile faded. Humans were not supposed to be precise. Deploy scouts, he ordered. Flush them. Argus 7. Combat Pit. The first wave of Ver scouts surged into the field. Sleek, black-dorsaled craft built for speed. Varric was already waiting. On my mark. 3, 2, mark. Argus 7's concealed rail batteries fired in perfect unison. Kinetic slugs, each the mass of a dropship, tore through the void. No flares, no energy signatures, just raw mass at impossible speed. 3 scouts disintegrated before they knew they were targeted. The rest scattered, drives flaring hard. Ra'al's voice was taut. They'll trace the shot vectors. They'll try, Varric said. Get us into shadow. Argus 7 slid behind a tumbling asteroid the size of a small city, vanishing into radar silence. Mars, Strategic Defense Corps. Kadrin listened to Varric's brief over a secure line, the edges of his mouth tightening. They're not invulnerable, Varric's voice came through. We just tore out their sensor net and clipped their scouts before they knew we were there. Good, Kadrin said. Hold position. Keep them looking the wrong way. Roan leaned toward him. You're thinking of moving Theta into that sector now. Kadrin didn't answer. He didn't need to. Inside the nest. Talvek stood in the quiet after the skirmish, studying the tactical feed. He should have been angry. Instead, he was intrigued. Humans, it seemed, could hunt. He turned to his second. Send word to the fleet, double the perimeter, and prepare the first strike on their home system. The war had been in motion for days, but now it was about to burn. Ver Nest, Outer Rim. The command tier thrummed with activity after Tolvek's order. Fleet captains stood in a half-circle below his balcony, their crests flaring in readiness. Holocharts showed the strike route, a direct burn toward the Sul system, supported by 3 waves of raiders. Fuel reserves? Talvek asked. Full, Executor, replied the chief quartermaster. Hyperfuel convoys from the Heliox line will be here within the cycle. Talvek's gaze lingered on the star map, Sul highlighted in blood red. Then we move. I want the human home system gutted before they can rally. No warnings, no survivors. The captains bowed low and began issuing orders down the chain. Argus 7, Outer System. In the shadow of a fractured moon, Varric Reen studied the intercepted transmission, its guttural Ver speech already translated and scrolling across his console. Ra'al's voice was tight. They're staging for Sol, sir. Multiple task forces. Supply convoys inbound to this nest from at least 3 sectors. Varric just nodded. He keyed the tactical net. Deploy Hunter knots. Target every relay buoy in their supply lanes. I want them blind and deaf before those convoys arrive. The Argus 7's belly split open, releasing a swarm of black drones. Each one hugged the cold shadow of drifting rock, transponders broadcasting false Ver IDs. They threaded through the nest's perimeter gaps, moving not to jam the network, but to replace it. One by one, comm buoys fell silent, then began broadcasting human-forged reports. Convoys on schedule, patrols clear, no enemy contacts. The Ver would keep waiting for ships that would never arrive. Inside the nest, Talvek paced the balcony, listening as reports trickled in from the outer sectors. Convoy Heliox 3, he demanded. On approach, Executor, came the reply. Good. Prepare strike formation. A sharp tone cut through the chamber. A comm officer looked up, crest flickering in unease. Executor, Heliox 3 is late. No signal. Then find them, Talvek snapped. Double the patrol screen. Asteroid belt, grid 7. Varric watched the last convoy die in silence. Hunter knots hit without flares or warning, their kinetic strikes ripping ships apart before any distress code could form. Debris drifted like glitter through the void. Ral's voice was low. "That's the last lane in the sector." "Good," Varric said. "Send Kadrin the update, and make it clear, they're not coming to Sol with a full belly." War Room, Olympus Mont's command. The holomap lit with fresh data as Kadrin read Varric's report. Roan stood at his side, arms folded. 3 sectors blind, supply chain gutted. They'll have to delay their strike. Kadrin's gaze shifted to the far side of the map, a single icon marked Theta orbiting deep in Sol space. "Delay's all we need." Harvek frowned. "Theta's still in calibration." "Then finish it," Kadrin said. "When they come, I want the shot lined and waiting." High orbit Luna. The orbital kinetic cannon platform. Theta floated in the moon's shadow, a skeletal giant braced around a barrel that could punch through a battleship at light minutes. Service drones crawled over its rails, locking the final segments, feeding power into its coils. Inside the control core, the targeting matrix spun in silent calculation. No speeches, no fanfare, just a single update in the operations log. Theta status, ready. Outer rim, Heliox corridor. After their scouts pulled back from the asteroid nest, the Ver fleet reformed and pushed into the Heliox corridor, the only fast route toward Sol. Argus 7 was already there, waiting in its shadow. The Heliox nebula boiled in violet and crimson, swallowing light like a living thing. Within its folds, Argus 7 moved at combat idle, engines cold, hull darkened with asteroid dust from the belt they'd slipped through. Commander Varric Rin stood in the forward bay, eyes locked on the faint glimmer of the Ver fleet massing in the corridor. The rebels had committed everything: carriers, siege platforms, and the heavy cruisers that once enforced the Galactic Council's law. "They're taking the bait," Ensign Ral reported, her voice tight. "Intercept course to Sector Delta 9, straight toward the false convoy." Varric allowed himself a slow breath. The convoy was nothing more than gutted freighters, stripped Terran hulls rigged with hot reactors to look like prime targets. Hidden in the nebula's eddies, Theta Platform's long-range targeting array was already aligning. "Maintain shadow position," Varric ordered. "No one fires until they're inside the box. Flagship Dominion of Wills." High Executor Cern. Talvek leaned over his command dais, the purple stormlight of the nebula painting jagged shadows across his chitin armor. "Report," he demanded. "Long-range scans confirm Terran haulers ahead," his tactical officer replied. "Minimal escort. Reactor output matches deep-haul freighters." Talvek's crown crests lifted in satisfaction. "They run from us and still leave us gifts. Strike wings, engage. Today, another colony starves." The fleet surged forward, acceleration blooms lost in the nebula's haze. None of the Ver noticed that the buoys guiding their path no longer belonged to them. Every navigational update was feeding them deeper into the kill zone. War Room, Olympus Mont's command. Admiral Kadrin stood with arms folded as Marshal Roan brought Theta's live feed to the central hollow. The skeletal ring hung in stark contrast against the void, its barrel aimed not at a nearby orbit, but light minutes away, straight into the Heliox corridor. "Target lock in 90 seconds, Roan said. Kadrin's gaze didn't move. "Confirm charge sequence." "Spinal capacitors at 98%. Thermal bleed nominal. We can fire the instant you give the word." Argus 7. Ver fleet entering the box, Ral reported. 37 major hulls, plus escorts. They're spacing themselves exactly as the sim predicted. Varick's hands tightened on the railing. This close, the distortion from their drives rippled across the Argus 7's hull like a silent heartbeat. "They still think they're hunting," he said. "Transmit confirmation to Theta." Ral hesitated. "Sir, we won't be clear when it fires." Varick's eyes stayed on the tactical display. "We don't need to be clear. We need to be ready." Ver flagship, Dominion of Wills. A flicker rippled across the tactical grid. One of the Terran freighters ahead fractured into a dozen false echoes, each diving away on separate vectors. The Ver formation opened to pursue, exactly as designed. Talvek leaned forward. "They scatter like prey. Close the jaws." And so he never noticed the needle-thin targeting solution that had just locked onto his flagship from a weapon stationed hundreds of thousands of kilometers away. Theta platform, Earth's moon. Inside the gunnery core, the final targeting run began. A cold, mechanical voice filled the chamber. "Solution locked. Compensating for gravitational drift. Spinal capacitors at full." Marshal Roan's voice came over secure channel. "On Admiral's mark." Cadron stood in silence for 3 seconds, watching the Ver fleet's formation tighten exactly where the crosshairs overlapped. Then he spoke, voice low, certain. "Mark." A hum like the birth of a star began to build. The heliox corridor burned in the tactical display, a great violet wound in the black. Somewhere inside that haze, the Dominion of Wills led 37 major hulls toward what they believed were helpless Terran haulers. On Luna's far side, the barrel of Theta platform thrummed in its cradle. The sound wasn't loud. It was a vibration that lived in bone and teeth, running coil to coil as an entire continent's worth of power was channeled into a single, perfect line. Capacitors peaked. Telemetry blinked green in a rolling wave. The lights dimmed across the gunnery core. Then, all at once, the hum stopped. "Release," Marshal Roan said. There was no roar, no fiery plume, just a sharp, surgical flash at the muzzle as 16 meters of forged mass, skin wrapped in guidance veins too small to see, left the barrel with nothing but a ripple in the starlight. No exhaust, no trail, only an absence moving faster than thought. Across light minutes, the Ver fleet never saw a projectile. They saw a line. For a fraction of a fraction, space itself seemed to draw tight. And then that nothing crossed the battle space. The slug struck the Dominion of Wills dead center. There was no explosion, just a collapsing of form, the flagship dimpling and folding in on itself as if crushed by an invisible fist. The round didn't slow. It punched through the aft spine, tore the heart from a carrier, cored a siege platform, and brushed 3 escorts that had the misfortune of existing along that trajectory. Half the formation was gone between one heartbeat and the next. On Argus 7, Varick Rin stood silent. The tactical overlay updated, red to gray, gray to black. Ensign Rahl swallowed. "Impact confirmed. Multiple secondaries. No debris field in the primary corridor." "Of course not," Varick said quietly. "There's nothing left to make one." Panic rippled through what remained of the Ver command net. With Talvek erased in an instant, ships froze or turned in every direction at once, each chasing orders that no longer came from anyone alive. The navigation buoys lied to them, feeding them corridors that looped back into kill zones. A cruiser tried to pivot into the nebula's shadow. Its spine sheared apart a second later, clipped by the slug's invisible wake. "Pick the runners," Varick ordered. "No survivors who can point back to us." Micro-rail mounts along Argus 7's spine whispered their replies. 2 escorts folded inward. A third tried to hide behind wreckage that wasn't there. On Mars, Admiral Cadron watched the feed slow to stillness, one armada reduced to a smear of nothing in the heliox haze. Roan's voice broke the quiet. "Theta reports rail clean. Barrel temp nominal." Cadron didn't look away. "Power it down." "Sir." "Follow on targets." "We don't need a second lesson," Cadron said. Somewhere in the corridor, dust that had once been ships drifted and vanished into the nebula. 3 days later, the galaxy was still holding its breath. The Vare Loyalist Conclave, no longer pretending neutrality, sent an envoy to the Terran Council. He did not wear armor. He did not posture. His membranes were muted gray as he bowed before the Terran seal. "We are not them," he said. "We did not sanction their rebellion. We did not sanction what they did to your colony. We ask recognition of that separation and terms." The terms came quickly. Terran control of the Asterian Veil and its rich mineral belts. 40 cycles of free corridor access. No tolls, no inspections. Public censure of the Ascendancy Splinter. And, carved into record for every world to read, an apology that used the right words. On Argus 7, Raul stood at the forward viewport, watching the slow roll of names on New Thessaly's memorial feed. No music, no speeches, just the list. Varick's reflection was a dark outline against the light of the stars. "You held the line," he said to the dead. We answered. A soft chime. Mars on a secure channel. Cadron's voice came through, steady as stone. "Varick, good hunting." "Good math," Varick replied. Neither mentioned the weapon sleeping above Luna or how easily it could wake. They didn't have to. The final broadcast went out to every channel in the spiral. The Terran seal filled the feed, alone in the dark. Cadron's voice. "We are slow to anger. That is true. Fabricate our dead, and we will not argue. We will end the conversation." The transmission cut. The silence that followed moved faster than any ship. In that silence, maps changed, corridors opened, doctrines were rewritten, and history added a new lesson to the old one about humans. Their restraint has limits.